Revealed, the sinister secrets of our haunted diner in northern Minnesota's terrifying night shift. Jessica stepped into the Old Pine Diner, her new refuge in a storm of bills and endless worries. The pale yellow paint peeled in places, the flickering neon sign buzzed like a swarm of angry wasps. It felt alive, in a deeply unsettling way. Shadows flitted about, whispering secrets as the rain drummed a chaotic rhythm on the windows. She poured coffee, her hands trembling slightly, not just from exhaustion but from a gut feeling that tonight wouldn't just be another shift. Any chance for a refill? A voice cut through her thoughts. She looked up, her heart racing. The older man in the corner booth met her gaze, an intense look in his eyes, as if he knew her fears. Something in his smile twisted unease in her stomach. She nodded, pouring the steaming coffee, trying to brush it off. She was here to take care of her son, Lucas, to make some extra cash for food and rent. The diner's usual hustle filled her ears, the sizzle of bacon, the clatter of plates. But the patrons seemed different. They ate in silence, eyes occasionally darting to Jessica. The clock ticked closer to midnight. A wave of goosebumps prickled her skin. She shook her head, convincing herself it was just fatigue. She hadn't been sleeping well all week. As she moved to the back, nerves tingling, she overheard fragments of hushed conversations. The locals avoided mentioning the diner's past. There had been disappearances, a history steeped in shadows. A chill crept up her spine. She steadied her breath, focusing on serving her customers. Just a few more shifts, she reminded herself. But the longer she worked, the more she felt trapped. "Can I help you with anything?" she asked a table of patrons who stared at her, silent and hollow. Their eyes were like dark wells and it made her skin crawl. The conversation stopped abruptly. One man finally leaned in, whispering, "You should leave while you can." Mississippi panic flared in her chest. Lucas. Where was he? She hurried to check the back of the diner, barely catching a glimpse of his small figure slipping toward the basement door. Lucas. No. She screamed, her voice echoing through the cramped kitchen before spilling into the dimly lit hallway leading to the basement. The basement was cold, the metal door shuddering against her frantic hand. She kicked it open, heart pounding. Lucas stood frozen, eyes wide, transfixed by the grim relics sprawled across the floor, inscribed stones, bound books, symbols she didn't dare comprehend. The air felt thick, electric, with a presence that seemed to snarl in the dark. "No. Come here," she yelled, voice rising, but her son just pointed, trembling. A whisper slithered through the shadows, "This place, it feeds on your despair." Before she could understand, footsteps echoed behind her, the patrons surrounding her now silent, shadowy figures, their eyes glinting with wicked intent. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jessica felt the walls closing in, she could barely breathe. The once comforting face of the diner warped into something sinister. The older man in the corner was smiling again, and this time it wasn't friendly. "You shouldn't have come here, Jessica. Not after everything you've already lost." What did he mean? The shadows leaned closer. Fear coiled around her like a vice, tightening, cutting off hope. As Lucas backed away from the darkness behind her, she felt a surge of determination. She had to shield him from whatever horrors lurked in the very air they breathed. The rain pounded furiously against the roof, thunder rolled ominously outside. The last vestiges of calm flickered away like the dying neon lights. Jessica's breath quickened, heart racing as she turned to the shadows closing in. She felt their whispers wrapping around her throat. She had to fight, she had to uncover the diner's haunting secret or risk losing everything. Would she dare face the nightmare that awaited, or would she crumble before the darkness? The shadows enveloped them, carrying an electric weight that pressed against Jessica's chest. The hum of malevolence sung in her ears as she grasped Lucas's hand, pulling him closer. The floor beneath them felt alive, pulsating, as if the very building was breathing. She could hear the patrons' whispers melding into one unsettling chant, a dark melody of despair and warning, "Leave, leave, leave Mom." Lucas whimpered, his small frame trembling against her. His wide green eyes were filled with fear, mirroring her own. What is happening? She wanted to shield him, but the tightening grip of dread nearly paralyzed her. The older man leaned forward, his gnarled fingers drumming on the table, keeping rhythm with the frantic pulse of her heart. "You can't fight what's south inside this place," he crooned, his voice as honeyed as poison. "It knows you, your stories, your fears. Shut up." Jessica shouted, jerking away from the man's gaze, her voice cracking. "I want to let it take us." The words hung in the thick air, swallowed by silence before the sinister quiet cracked wide open. The sound of silverware clattering and mugs thudding against tables rang harshly like a steel door slamming shut. She felt the room shift, the air dripping with tension. The patrons, once mere spectators, arose, their faces twisted in ghastly smiles, mouths too wide, revealing teeth that glinted in the darkness like sharpened blades. "Leave while you can," a woman's voice hissed from one corner, her eyes hollow pits as if her very soul was being drained. Jessica pulled Lucas deeper into the shadows of the basement, but the dark followed them, curling around like a serpent hungry for its prey. "We can't stay here," she whispered, squeezing his hand tightly, her own trembling as she backed away from the crowd. Behind her, the staircase loomed like a narrow passage into the depths of hell. "We need to find a way out." A tense moment passed as she wrestled with the shadows clawing at her resolve. Just as she was about to make a break for the stairs, Lucas gasped, pointing to the floor. Written in the dust, patterns formed symbols that twisted and turned like a labyrinth. "Mom, look!" In that moment, the patrons paused, their eager expressions shifting to indifference, eyes glazed over like marbles. Time felt as though it held its breath, all sounds muted. The only thing left was the chilling realization that the symbols were phrases carved deep into her memory, her lost love, her darkest fears, her regrets. "This place feeds on despair," she thought, the knowing sinking in like a rusted knife. "It revels in the pain we carry." With renewed strength, she clutched Lucas's hand. "We're not giving you anything," she declared, her voice cutting through the silence like a shard of ice, but suddenly, a gut-wrenching laugh erupted from the crowd, echoing off the damp walls. "Oh, but you already have." That mocking voice sent chills rippling through her, a bitter taste of fear and defeat swirling in her throat. Thunder crashed outside, drowning out the laughter. Jessica's breath hitched as she turned, the basement door abruptly slamming shut, trapping them. Panic surged. Her instincts screamed to run, yet her feet remained glued to the floor. The shadows clawed closer, hungry for her despair. Then, the older man whispered again, his breath hot against the back of her neck. "Your past is inexorably linked to this diner. Can you face the truth, Jessica? The true cost of what you've lost." The shadows pulsed, ready to devour her whole. Jessica felt the weight of her memories pressing down, a tidal wave of grief threatening to drown her. She looked down at Lucas, terrified yet courageous, and made a vow to uncover the truth, whatever darkness it held. But as the figures lurked nearer, she realized they were not just trying to siphon her despair, they were preparing for something darker, something only revealed when trust waned and fear flourished. From the corner of her eye, a glimmer of silver caught her attention, a key lying half buried in the dust. What door did it unlock? What horrors awaited under the weight of knowing? And with that chilling thought, Jessica found her voice, steadying her resolve, ready to face whatever came next. The shadows were near, but she wasn't done fighting yet. Could she break the cycle before it consumed everything she loved? Everything she was? Her pulse quickened. The time for answers was slipping away. In the depths of despair, the truth loomed, and with it, an even greater terror. The shadows throbbed, an almost sentient force pressing hard against Jessica as she reached for the key, the cold metal biting into her warm palm. She felt the air around her whip and writhe, angered by her defiance. With each heartbeat, the laughter of the patrons grew louder, intertwining with the low growl of thunder outside. "Mom, what's happening?" Lucas's voice quivered, his grip tightening around her fingers. She turned to him, her heart breaking at the sight of his wide, terrified eyes. Fear was palpable in the thick air, and Jessica could taste the metal tang of anxiety on her tongue. "We're getting out of here," she gasped, her voice firmer than she felt. As she looked for an exit, the faces of the patrons morphed into grotesque masks of torment, their smiles now revealing rows of jagged teeth, dripping with a dark murky shadow. The older man stood at the edge of the group, swaying slightly, a puppeteer of despair. And then, suddenly, he stepped forward, the others parting like water around him. "Your past cannot be outrun, Jessica," he taunted, his eyes gleaming with a manic glint. "It is your essence, binding you to this place. You cannot escape what you truly are." An icy wave of realization washed over her. This wasn't just a diner, it was a trap, a black hole for lost souls drawn in by their own shadows. "Let us go." Jessica pulled on Lucas, sprinting toward the staircase just as a fierce gust of wind blew against her back, pushing her forward. The door was solid, and she could feel the thick wood pulsing with energy, a heartbeat alive and sinister. "Mom, no!" Lucas cried, pulling her arm back. "What if it's worse up there?" She hesitated, her gut twisting, battling the urge to confront the creeping dread seeping through every crack in the floor. "We have to try, Lucas. I won't let them keep us here." Thunder roared louder, drowning out the madness behind them, until she realized after a deafening crash there was something lurking in the broken silence above. It felt heavy, like an unseen force waiting, lurking just beyond the door. With one last glance at the shadows, she thrust the key into the lock. It slid in, surprisingly smooth, and she twisted it. A rush of cold air burst through as the door creaked open, anticipation and dread tangled as a chilling whimper floated up from the depths of the staircase. "Jessica Lucas," the voice echoed, a mix of familiar love twisted into sorrow, the sound of someone who knew them intimately. Was it a warning? Or a cry for help? "Mom, we can't." Lucas's voice trembled, his small body stiffening beside her. But the moment's indecision flickered. Jessica stepped through the doorway, drawn toward the chilling sound as if it were a magnet bearing her name, luring her into its depths. As she emerged into the darkness of the upper room, the light flickering above illuminated fragments of broken memories, a crumpled photograph lying at her feet, a childhood toy, dust-covered and forgotten. Instinctively, she bent to gather the pieces of her own history. They called out to her, each item heavy with its own sorrow. "I'm here." She shouted into the void, her voice ringing hollow, swallowed by the night. But the air thickened. It wrapped around her throat, squeezing tighter. Across the room stood a long mirror framed in blackened wood, obscured by shadows. Glancing at it, Jessica's reflection flickered, distorted and twisted, her haunted eyes staring out at her, searching for solace but finding only despair. "Can you face it?" The older man's voice echoed, louder now, brushing against her logic like a shiver. "What if the truth is harder to bear?" Her heartbeat pounded louder than her thoughts. She had a choice to make, to confront the very despair she fought so hard against. But what truths lay hidden within that mirror? "Don't let it win!" Lucas shouted, breaking through the fog, his small voice brimming with urgency. Suddenly, the floor trembled, the air thick with danger, as if it were waiting for her next move. The walls began to close in, the darkness swirling with malevolence. With a determined breath, Jessica stepped closer to the mirror, bracing herself for what lay ahead. What horror awaited in the depths of her reflection? Would she unravel the secrets that tied her to this cursed diner? The shadows drew near, awaiting her decision. The key still clutched tightly in her hand, she prepared to face whatever came next. Would she unlock her past or become another ghost shadowed by despair? Jessica's breath caught in her throat as she stared into the mirror's depths. The reflection was no longer her own, it was a twisted version of herself, her face marked by a sorrow etched into the very fabric of the glass. An unseen hand gripped her heart, squeezing tighter as the shadows swirled, twisting and writhing like serpents hungry for release. "Don't look away," Lucas pleaded, his tiny hand trembling as he pressed against her side. She could feel his fear radiating like a palpable force, merging with her own rising terror, but something deeper pulled at her, inviting her to step closer. As if the mirror weren't merely reflecting her form but pulling her essence within. Swallowing hard, she reached out a tentative finger, willing herself to touch the surface. The instant her skin brushed the mirror, a shockwave of memories flooded her mind. Scenes crashed over her like tidal waves, days of laughter, moments of despair, a silhouette of a figure she couldn't quite identify standing in the background of her past. A mother's face, torn with grief. A child's laughter turning to sobs. Each memory felt like a blade, tearing at the threads of her sanity. "Mom!" Lucas's voice cut through the chaos, urgent and straining. She snapped back, gasping, pulling her hand away as fear thundered through her. The mirror rippled, darkening, revealing the faces of the patrons, twisted into grotesque masks of hunger. They pressed against the glass, their mouths moving, whispering something unintelligible, but it sounded like her name, like a chant meant to draw her back. "Jessica," they sang, a chorus of lost souls begging her to join them, to give in to the despair they wore like a shroud. "No!" she shouted, as if her voice could shatter their grasp. "I want tea." The strength of her defiance tremored through her, even as the shadows fought back, clawing at the edges of her mind. "Mom, we have to go." Lucas tugged at her hand, his eyes glistening with tears. "Please." But she was torn. The grip of her past was too powerful. A flood of emotion crashed over her, nostalgia mixed with pain, and she felt despair's cold embrace inching closer. In that moment, she instinctively knew what the man had meant about her essence. With that realization, she braced herself as the whispers turned to screams, shattering the eerie calm around them. The walls shook, the air tasting of iron as dread coiled tighter around her core. "Face it, Jessica. You can't run from what you are." The voice echoed again, now suffused with twisted joy. Deep within the noise, she had a choice. Surrender to this labyrinth of her sorrows or fight to break the chains tethered to her. Lucas looked up, still holding her hand, the innocence of his gaze flickering in the darkness. The reflection flickered once more, and in that instant, she saw the truth of her failures, flashes of moments where fear paralyzed her choices, where she let the shadows win. But now, amid that pain, a resolve ignited within her. "I want to be your prisoner," she cried, looking into the mirror not with fear, but with fierce determination. Jessica stepped forward again, resolute, prepared to reclaim her story. The mirror warped under her gaze, rippling like disturbed water as she reached for it again, ready to confront the darkness that had plagued her thoughts for too long. But just before she touched the surface, a scream erupted from the staircase below, echoing like a death knell. "Mom! Help me!" Lucas's voice cut through her resolve like a knife, igniting a fresh wave of panic. She turned quickly, desperation clawing at her insides. What had she unleashed? The shadows responded, racing toward her with an insatiable hunger. As the mirror spun into chaos, would she run to save her son or face the beast lurking in the truth? The air crackled, tension tightening around them, ready to explode. As a ghastly roar filled the room, she knew then there was no escaping her fate. What awaited them in the dark wouldn't just test her resolve but threatened to tear apart the very fabric of their lives. Would they make it out alive? Jessica spun on her heel, heart hammering wildly against her ribcage as she glanced back at the mirror. The grotesque faces pulled back, whispering her name in a dreadful crescendo, but Lucas's desperate call tore through the cacophony. Instinct sharpened her senses. She dashed toward the staircase, each step echoing like thunder in her ears. With every stride, the shadows seemed to follow, closing in from every angle, a suffocating wave of darkness. Lucas! She shouted, fear twisting her gut into tight knots. The faint outline of her son flickered in the dim light ahead, a beacon of hope she clung to. The darkened corridor loomed ominously, shadows creeping along the walls like fingernails raking through wood. The air thickened, swallowing her breath. A chill swept past her, icy fingers creeping along her spine and right into her heart. Mom! Help me! Lucas's voice echoed again, but this time, it sounded distorted, deeper, twisted. A chill settled in her gut. What was going on? Don't you dare! Stay there! She yelled, pushing through the weight of the dark. Tension surged, like a taut wire ready to snap. As she reached the bottom of the staircase, she stumbled to a stop. The diner stood shrouded in unnatural gloom, furniture largely obscured, a tangible veil of malice hanging in the air. The familiar smell of fried dough and pancakes morphed into something rotten, suffocating. Lucas! She cried again, zeroing in on a cold draft swirling from the back kitchen. Another echo of his name slipped through her ears. A sudden crash reverberated from the kitchen, shaking the shaky walls of the diner. Jessica felt as if the chaos had entered her mind. Fear clawed at her heart, visions of Lucas trapped in a dark abyss cycling through her thoughts. With trembling hands, she pushed through the swinging door into the kitchen. The air turned heavy, as if she were submerged in cold water. Pots and pans littered the floor, but the sound of Lucas's voice became clearer, brittle like glass. Mom! Up here! Please! Her heart skipped. The pantry door stood ajar, shadows flickering like ghosts behind it. Jessica gritted her teeth, determination overtaking the waver in her voice. She took a cautious step forward, dread wrapping around her. As she reached for the door, a slimy hand shot out, thin and claw-like, seizing her wrist tightly. The world tilted, panic surged as she felt the cold grip squeeze harder. She looked down in horror, seeing a face peering from behind the door, eyes wide, sunken, and filled with a hollow void, a reflection of everything she feared. Join us, Jessica, it hissed, and her pulse quickened as she pulled away, repulsed. Her world was shrinking, every shadow clawing closer, desperate to drag her down. Let go of me! She screamed, fighting against the pull. Help me! Lucas's voice shattered through the haze of darkness. This wasn't just her battle, it was for him. Jessica drew on the last of her strength and surged forward, wrenching the door open. Time slowed as she stepped inside. The pantry was flooded with a cold, eerie light, revealing the ghostly countenance of her son standing there, eyes wide and searching. But next to him loomed something monstrous. A figure emerged from the shadows, more massive and maddening than anything she could have imagined, its crooked smile stretching impossibly wide. Time hung suspended. Fear surged as she realized she had to choose. Lucas! She cried, feeling the weight of despair close in around them both. Would she save him or succumb to the terror that had haunted her for so long? The monster tilted its head, a grin that was neither friendly nor human spread across its face. Embrace the darkness, Jessica, moments blurred, fraying at the edges. She was lost for a breath, facing the true terror of her choices. Would love guide her, or would she lose him to the encroaching night? With a final gasp, Jessica snatched Lucas's hand just as the beast lurched forward, hungry for her surrender. The very air vibrated with tension, and as she strove to break free, she realized the grip of fate was far tighter than she had bargained for. What fate awaited in the dark as they fought to escape the pandemonium? Would the determination squeezed into that moment be enough, or would she make a choice that sealed their doom? Jessica's heart raced, each beat pounding like a warning bell as she held on to Lucas's hand. The creature lurched again, its elongated shadow wrapping around them. She could feel its cold breath, sweet and sour, like decay. Time seemed to stretch into eternity, but she couldn't afford to hesitate. Run! She shouted, yanking Lucas towards the back of the pantry. The ghostly light flickered in synchronization with their panic, illuminating the way in distorted flashes. Together, They dashed past rows of dusty shelves, filled with jars that seemed to tremble with life. The chanting grew louder, the hissing voices merging into a song of the damned that clawed at her ears. The air grew heavier, heavier, as if a great weight pressed down on her shoulders. "Don't look back, just keep going," she urged, feeling Lucas's small hand squeeze hers tightly, the warmth a fierce contrast to the encroaching cold. As they reached the door on the far side of the pantry, she pushed it open and stumbled into the next room. The dim light revealed unfinished wood and exposed pipes. The basement of the diner. Her breath caught. She'd never even known there was one. A wave of dread washed over her. What lurked down here? The shadows danced violently around them, as if alive. Behind her, the pantry door slammed shut with a force that shook the walls. "Why is this happening?" Lucas cried, eyes wide with fear. I don't know," Jessica admitted, her thoughts racing. "But we have to find a way out." Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but she forced herself to breathe. They had to move. The basement seemed to stretch endlessly. She spotted a stairway at the far end, leading up to a doorway that glowed eerily under a flickering bulb. As they ran, the chanting grew louder, deafening, a ghastly symphony that echoed off the concrete walls. Suddenly, the air shifted. The shadows morphed, becoming more tangible, coiling at their feet like sinuous snakes. Jessica felt them tugging at her ankles, warning her, tempting her to turn back. "Mom! It's not safe." Lucas's voice trembled, adding to the suffocating fear that enveloped them. "Just a bit further," she shouted back, determination burning brighter than her terror. They surged toward the staircase, despair pushing her forward. As they climbed, the cold clawed at their backs, trying to drag them down, but Jessica refused to let go of Lucas. She could feel the beast behind them, pursuing with unyielding hunger, whispering their doom. Upon reaching the top, Jessica pushed through the door, nearly colliding with the diner's dining hall. The once familiar atmosphere was twisted and grotesque, a mocking parody of the warmth it should have held. Tables were overturned, chairs askew, and the glass of the front door crackled ominously. The diner, once a safe haven, had become a trap, an altar draped in shadows, welcoming despair instead of hunger. "Mom, where do we go?" Jessica shivered, scanning for any refuge. "There. The front door." But as she pointed, the door trembled, red glass splintering as something heavy pressed against it from outside. A howl of wind swept through, shrilling like a madman's laughter. "Mom! It's coming!" The hairs on Jessica's arms stood on end, every instinct screaming for her to run. But another door stood to the left, a flickering light spilling from it like a desperate promise. "Lucas, we have to take our chances," she urged. Grabbing his hand tightly, they dashed toward the door just as the ominous howl crescendoed, like a beast ready to claw its way inside. With a deep breath, Jessica shoved the door open and they stumbled into darkness. An endless void swallowed them, and the instant the door slammed shut behind them, Jessica felt heat radiate from something just out of sight. What awaited in that dark abyss? Would they find safety, or was this another trap? "Mom!" Lucas whispered, his voice laden with terror. "I don't know, but we'll face it together," she promised. Glimmers of light began to twinkle, swirling in the darkness, and the frantic whispers started again, this time clearer, beckoning them closer. "Follow us, Jessica." Lucas. What awaited them in the void? The shadows buzzed with promises and threats alike, twisting the very nature of hope. Would she and Lucas find a way out, or was the darkness already claiming them? The darkness enveloped Jessica and Lucas like a suffocating blanket. The heat pulsed rhythmically, alive, almost like a heartbeat. Shadows skittered along the walls, flickering just out of sight, and the whispers became a cacophony growing louder, each word wrapping around their thoughts like barbed wire. "Mom, I don't want to be here." Lucas's voice cracked, a thin thread of fear cutting through the thick atmosphere. "Neither do I, but we can't give in," Jessica replied, her voice trembling despite her efforts to sound brave. The glow of those distant lights flickered eerie green and yellow, hinting at some twisted semblance of a path. "Follow us, Jessica." Lucas. The ethereal voices slithered through the air, slamming against her mind, urging them forward. Instinct warned her. These were not calls for help, they sounded like taunts, luring them deeper into the abyss. "Maybe we should go back," Lucas suggested, pulling away slightly. "No," she snapped, snapping out of her haze. "We can't go back. Not back there." She inhaled sharply, memories of the pantry overwhelmed her. "Just keep moving." They edged closer to the swirling lights, each step pulling them into a brighter patch of illumination, but the shadows loomed larger every second. Tentacles of darkness writhed in anticipation. Something terrible waited for them, they could feel it. Suddenly, the whispers surged into an uproar, a chorus of trapped souls, each one desperate and angry. Screams echoed through the void, and the bright lights dimmed an insidious flicker that plunged them into a deeper darkness. "What do they want?" Lucas whimpered, staring up at her with eyes wide and glassy. "I don't know." The truth hung in the air like a bitter aftertaste. She was losing control. "But we have to stick together. We're stronger that way." As they pressed on, the swirling lights surged back, but this time, they clung to something, a shimmering object that reflected the pale glow. Jessica reached out instinctively, but the tip of her fingers barely brushed the orb before it swung upward, soaring high above her reach. A shadow darted past them like a flash of darkness. The very shadows they feared congregated, forming into a grotesque figure with elongated limbs and hollow eyes. It laughed, a sound raw and cruel, the kind that churned the stomach and froze blood in their veins. "Join us," it hissed, and with its voice, the very walls seemed to pulse as if breathing. "Join the feast." Jessica stumbled back, eyes wild. "No. We're not going with you." But the laughter continued, growing, saturating the room with an oppressive weight. The creature reached out, its fingers glistening like oil, then it lunged. "Run!" Jessica screamed, her heart pounding like a trapped bird inside her chest. Without thinking, she yanked Lucas's arm, racing back the way they came, but the shadows coiled tighter, forcing her toward the flickering lights that felt like deception. "Where do we go?" Lucas cried, panic choking his words. "Anywhere but here. Just run." As they sprinted, a feeling of disorientation swallowed them. The floor twisted, and their surroundings morphed into a grotesque maze of pulsating shadows. The whisper of the beast slithered through the air, wrapping around them like vines, pulling at their wills. Every corner they turned seemed to rattle with the din of anguished voices begging for release. A door appeared ahead, glowing faintly compared to the darkness around it. Jessica's instincts shouted that it might lead to salvation or doom. "Lucas, we have to take that door." But it wasn't just darkness retreating, it clawed back at them with a rage they couldn't explain. Shadows moved as if sentient, desperate to cling to their skin. "Come on. We can make it," she urged, dragging Lucas along, but doubt crept in, gnawing at her resolve. Did they have enough courage to face the unknown ahead? The door stood ajar, beckoning, but Jessica hesitated at the threshold. What lay beyond? Behind them, the creature's laughter crescendoed into maddening shrieks. "We're running out of time." With a fierce shove, Jessica burst through the door, her breath hitching in her throat. What awaited them on the other side? The air felt slick and thick, almost cloying. "Mom!" Lucas's voice faded as Jessica stared into an expanse of unending night, the outlines of twisted landscape stretching before them, emptiness beckoning, filled with shadows. She had stepped into another realm, caught in the grip of horror. What awaited them there? Suddenly, the realization crashed down upon her: this was just the beginning. As the door slammed shut behind them, sealing their fate, a new voice emerged from the echoes. "Welcome home," and it was only the start. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating. Jessica stood frozen, her heart hammering, the weight of the whispers saturating the air around them. She glanced at Lucas, who was wide-eyed and shaking, as if the void they had stepped into might swallow him whole. "Mom, what is this place?" His small voice wavered, barely carrying through the oppressive silence. "I don't know, but we'll get through it," Jessica replied, forcing herself to sound confident despite the icy fingers of dread gripping her spine. Before them, the land stretched like a vast wasteland, tangled trees twisted in bizarre shapes, their branches clawing at the sky. The ground was uneven and shifted under their feet, as though alive, a low thrum rising with each pulse of fear. An eerie glow flickered irregularly, giving life to the shadows that danced hungrily around them. Then, a sound cut through the stillness, a low, guttural growl that slithered into their ears, sending chills down Jessica's back. It was the same growl that had chased them before, echoing memories from the pantry. She gripped Lucas's hand tighter. "Stay close," she whispered, pulling him forward. "We need to keep moving." As they walked, the shadows began to dart along the periphery of their vision, weaving in and out of the darkness with blinding speed. Each time Jessica turned her head, they vanished. It felt as if something was watching, lurking just beyond their sight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "What was that?" Lucas's voice was barely a whisper. "Just the dark," Jessica said, trying to sound reassuring, though her own heart raced. Ahead, something flickered, a shape that gleamed with an unearthly light. It was the same orb from before, but the shadows seemed to be drawn to it, swirling like moths around a flame. Jessica forced herself to take a step closer, but Lucas recoiled. "Don't, Mom. It's a trap." "Lucas, we need to find out what is going on," she urged, feeling drawn to the orb despite her instinct screaming to turn back. As they approached, the orb pulsed rhythmically, echoing the ominous heartbeat of the realm. It appeared closer now, but the shadows thickened, grabbing at her legs like icy hands. Jessica pulled back as her breath caught in her throat. The whispers grew louder, words blending into an unintelligible roar of torment. "Join us, stay with us, no," she yelled, shaking her head violently. "No more joining, no more feasts." Something deep inside her knew they needed to fight, to push back against whatever entity possessed this dark realm. Lucas stood rooted, terror painting his face. But before she could reach for him, a massive form surged from the shadows, a monstrous figure, its features twisted and grotesque. It loomed above them, eyes dark hollows dripping with malice. "Finish what you started, little girl," the creature rasped, its breath rank with decay. "You can sacrifice him or join our ranks." "No!" Jessica shouted, eyes wide in disbelief. "I'd never." Despair clawed at her heart, but she couldn't give in. The shadows lunged at them, and instinct kicked in. Jessica grabbed Lucas's hand and sprinted toward the luminescent orb. As they collided with its light, a shock wave coursed through them, sending bright sparks shooting through the darkness, momentarily pushing back the shadows and the creature's malice. "Keep running!" Jessica yelled, but her heart sank as they were engulfed by the darkness once more, their momentum halted, trapped between the light and the darkness. "What now?" Lucas cried, panic suffocating his voice. Ahead, a path opened up, but it twisted and shifted under their feet, an impossible escape. The creature's laugh echoed in the air, mingling with the cries of the shadows, a symphony of despair. In that moment, Jessica realized, the realm itself was alive, shifting and turning against them, feeding on fear. As she squared her shoulders, resolution hardening within her, one thought screamed louder than the rest: they had to break free from this nightmare. With a sudden gasp, Jessica turned to face the darkness. "We will not be part of your feast." But in that instant, the shadows surged, and everything went black. What lay beyond that blackness? What would the creatures demand next? And would they truly survive? When the darkness pulled back, it did so with a sudden, crushing force. Jessica felt as if she had been yanked from a deep ocean, gasping for air. She blinked, her eyes struggling to adjust to the flickering glow that returned. But what lay before her and Lucas was not the orb, not the way to safety. It was a vast expanse, an endless charnel house of echoes and memories. "Mom." Lucas's voice quivered with confusion. Stay close, she replied, her voice trembling against the weight of despair. But as she surveyed their surroundings, a cold dread coiled around her heart. They were surrounded by a landscape strewn with the torn remnants of existence. Shadows of people twisted in agony, their mouths open in silent screams as they writhed, reaching out as if pleading for salvation. Jessica's breath came shallow. This isn't right. The shadows seemed alive, writhing and moaning, a chorus of despair that drummed against her ears. They formed faces, spectral and ghastly, each one a reflection of fear and hopelessness. A gnawing thought crept into her mind: were these souls lost to the creature trapped in this horrific limbo forever? "Mom, we have to get out of here," Lucas said, his little body trembling as he pressed against her. She could feel the heat radiating from him, the desperate warmth of life fighting against the encroaching darkness. "Look for a way out, anything," Jessica urged, her heart racing as panic twisted in her gut. She took a step forward, the ground shifting uneasily underfoot, each stone a reminder of the countless souls obliviously left for dead. Her eyes darted around, searching desperately for an exit. Then she noticed a flicker of movement to her left. A figure stood among the shadows, half-formed and seemingly lost in contemplation. Its eyes glowed with malicious light, two vicious slits sizing them up. "Help us!" she shouted, but the words fell flat amid the moans of the lost. The creature turned slowly, revealing a twisted mouth that broke into a grin. "Welcome to the others' despair," its voice oozed, rich with malice. "They seek solace, but their cries only feed our hunger." It gestured with a long, slender arm toward the cacophony of shadows. Jessica's resolve hardened. "We're not here to join you." "Then you'll wish you had," it replied, and the ground beneath them trembled, sending vibrations in waves, fear itself unleashed. Lucas cried out, and Jessica felt the world tilt as the shadows surged forward, desperate for new souls. "Run!" she screamed, yanking Lucas along as the monstrous laughter trailed like fire in their wake. The path twisted, buttery and uncertain, with every step they seemed to sink further into terror. Ahead, a shimmer of light flickered again, beckoning but uncertain. Was it the way out or another cruel deception? Jessica hesitated, heart racing. "Mom, we have to go," Lucas pleaded, pulling on her hand. She fought against the sense of wrongness that weighed her down. "All right. Don't let go." As they dashed toward the flicker, the shadows swirled around them, growing darker and thicker, like a living fog trying to smother them. Jessica could feel cold breath on her neck, the whispers rising again, a harsh cacophony pleading for release. "Stay away," she shouted, but the shadows howled back, echoing her fears. Just before they reached the light, the air shimmered violently, and suddenly a shadow lunged from the depths, claws outstretched, long, skeletal fingers reaching for Lucas. Jessica yanked her son back, but the force of darkness seemed to pull at him. "No. Not my son," she screamed, her voice splintering under the pressure of desperation. In that moment, an anguished roar erupted, echoing as they reached the light. Jessica hadn't dared to hope, but something about it called to her spirit a surge of power, like a tether anchoring them back to life. They collided with the light and the world exploded into brilliance. But what had they left behind? What power had they awakened in the depths? Was the darkness truly gone, or was it merely waiting, lurking just beyond the edge of their sight? As the light faded, Jessica's heartbeat quickened anew, each pulse a reminder: they may have escaped, but the true horror was still to come. Jessica and Lucas stood in the blinding light, their surroundings shifting from a hellish nightmare to a blurry, ethereal realm. The brightness washed over them, warm as the sun, wrapping around them like a force field. They breathed deeply, drowning in a relief that felt almost foreign. As the light began to dim, the harsh shadows retreated, screeching as they vanished into the void, leaving only whispers behind, faint echoes of the darkness that had pursued them. But not for long. Jessica could still sense that something lingered, a dark will that stretched into the crevices of her mind. "Mom." Lucas's voice broke the stillness, looking up with wide, shimmering eyes, his small fingers trembling in hers. "Are we safe?" She knelt down, taking his face in her hands. For now, we are. But we need to move, sweetheart. We can't let the darkness find us again. The environment transformed. They stood in an endless, fog-laden field, surrounded by silhouettes of trees that seemed to shimmer against the backdrop of a twilight sky. It felt peaceful yet eerie, both a dream and a distorted reflection of reality. Look over there. Lucas pointed. In the distance stood an old, weathered sign. The words on it slowly came into focus, Old Pine Diner, the diner they had so desperately sought to escape. It lay just beyond their reach, yet somehow felt more like a memory than a real place now. Jessica's heart twisted. Why is it calling us back? I thought we escaped it. What if we have to go back to finish it? Lucas's voice trembled as he stared into the shadow of the diner. No. Jessica snapped, a fierce resolve igniting within her. We can't go back. The nightmares there, they'll take you from me. She felt the familiar tug of despair, creeping up like a cold mist, but she pushed it away hard. As they stood anchored to that spot, a ripple of fear released a surge of memories, dark figures lurking at midnight, screams echoing against warped walls, the laughter of shadows. Yet more than that, she remembered the uncomfortable truth of her own despair, mirrored in that cursed place. Mom, we have to face it, don't we? Lucas looked at her, eyes reflecting uncertainty and wisdom beyond his years. We can't run from it forever. With those gentle words, something clicked in Jessica's heart. He was right. The diner was where their story started, and it was where they would need to finish it. Okay, she said firmly, taking a deep breath. We will go back. But this time, we will confront the darkness together. I won't let it take you. With newfound determination, Jessica led Lucas toward the old diner. Each step felt heavy, burdened with memories and fears, but lightened by the flickers of hope fueling her heart. She clutched the key tightly. It wasn't just a key, it was her anchor to everything she needed to uncover. As they crossed the threshold into the familiar yet foreign space of the diner, the air chilled. The old yellow paint loomed above them like a lingering ghost, the neon sign buzzing ominously. They stepped through the door, which creaked like an ancient guardian questioning their resolve. Inside, the diner was even darker than before. The tables lay overturned, and the air felt thick with the unspoken. Settling into the atmosphere, Jessica's heart sank. She remembered the faces of the patrons. Theirs were not the only souls absorbed by despair. It was a place of lost dreams, and now it felt like they stood at the epicenter of a storm. That a voice echoed from the shadows, the same honeyed taunt that danced at the edges of her mind. Welcome back, Jessica. You cannot escape what lies in your heart, no. She shouted into the dark. I want to be your prisoner. We free ourselves. Come on, Lucas. She pulled him close, her eyes scanning the room. The echoes of despair swirled in like smoke, threatening to engulf them, but deep within, she felt a newfound strength solidify. With Lucas at her side, they started to walk forward. We're here to break the cycle. Jessica shouted again, voices of darkness rising and falling, but the weight of despair meeting the levity of hope. As they reached the center of the diner, Jessica turned the key, a shining beacon against the shadows. The door swung open, separating the haunted past from bright futures, each creak resonating like a heartbeat. The shadows writhed as if in agony, trying to regain their grasp, but with fierce defiance, Jessica shouted, "You don't get a choice anymore. We reclaim our story." Lucas squeezed her hand tighter, his courage igniting her resolve. Together they stepped into a blinding light, filled with laughter and warmth, the once suffocating shadows disintegrating behind them. One final pang of memory flickered, the faces of the patrons twisted in longing before dissolving into stars, a reminder of lives lost but not forgotten. When the light faded, they found themselves standing under an infinite sky, no shadows in sight. We did it. Lucas cheered, grinning widely. Jessica wrapped her arms around him, laughter spilling from her chest. They had reclaimed their freedom. For the first time in a long while, she felt light, as if the burdens of her past had been lifted. "Together," Lucas said, his eyes shining bright. "Always," Jessica replied, and they began to walk into their new dawn, leaving the darkness behind free at last. Don't forget, guys. This is your moment to show support for our channel. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive story packed with thrills and chills. Smash that like button now, help feed the algorithm. Flood the comments below with your reactions and theories about this ending. And for real, don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Thank you all for being part of this journey.